Hi, I'm Twisty, bass player for the Reckless Empire. Today, I'm going to talk to you about recording wet and dry signals on a dual output instrument like this Billy Sheehan bass. Unlike recording a single output instrument like this Yamaha BB734 behind me, recording a dual output instrument has a little bit more complexity trying to capture both dry signals when using a Helix. Just a quick reminder, on our YouTube channel we also post a bunch of gear and music videos, so check out the channel, subscribe and keep updated. Let's get started. For this session, I'm going to be using my Yamaha Billy Sheehan Attitude Limited 2 bass. This bass has two pickups, an EBO style neck pickup and a split P bridge pickup. Both pickups have their own independent output, which allows us to amplify or record each pickup independently. For the digital interface, I'm going to be using the Line 6 Helix LT. This one has firmware 2.82 on it. Connectivity from the guitar is via two guitar leads, one for each pickup. Output 1 from the neck pickup goes through the blue cable to the guitar input. The split P pickup comes via the red lead into return 1. The USB is providing the output to the computer. The XLR I'm not using for digital recording. I use that for either connectivity to the front of house for live work, or if I'm going to do an analog recording out to a desk in a studio. And the headphones I have connected to pick up the 1/4 inch output. So looking at HX Edit, we can see the signal flow for both pickups. I have the guitar input, which is coming from the neck pickup, and I have return 1, which is from the bridge pickup. If I look at guitar 1, the neck pickup, I'm going through, after using a noise gate on it, I'm going through a pitch shifter, which is doing bass octaver. I've got that disabled. I'm going through to an Ampeg SVT4 Pro, fairly clean signal. I'm then going through to an LA Studio Comp stereo compressor. I'm getting better sound out of the stereo compressor than I was getting out of the mono, but that's your choice. Instead of using a cab sim or an IR, I'm using an EQ block that was developed by Jon Willis from Dr. Tone's Secret Helix Lab. His links are below, and I encourage you to go to his website for amazing stuff. This is simulating a JBL 15-inch speaker cabinet. From there I'm going to a multi-out, which then goes panned hard left, which means I'm going out line 1. If I look at the bridge through return 1, again I've got a noise gate running on that. I then from that go into the busy 1 channel 2. This gives me that Billy Sheehan throaty growl in the pickup, which I really like. Again, stereo compressor, going to a pitch shift. Now this pitch shift was done by Jon Willis, some magic that he created whilst trying to strive for that Billy Sheehan tone. It gives a little bit of a chorusy effect. I really like it. It's very subtle and I like it in mine. The EQ again is the JBL 15-inch EQ. This time the output's going panned hard right. By going to the right, I'm now forcing that track out through channel 2. Now by itself, I'm getting a wet signal for the neck, I'm getting a wet signal for the dry, but what I'm not getting is a dry signal for return 1. From my previous video on recording wet and dry signals for bass using Helix, you will get a dry signal out of the guitar input through lines 7 and 8. However, I'm not going to be able to get the dry signal from return 1. So to get that, what I'm going to do is create a second path. To create a second path, I'm going to add a gain block. Now I disable the gain block because I actually don't want it to do anything, but I want to use that to create a second path. Now I'll just move this to the end. You'll see that this split is equal AB. By putting the split in, I'm allowing the signal to be directed through two paths. A wet path where it's affected by these, and then a dry signal with nothing on it. Now instead of going out both the same path, I'm going to drag this down and create a second output block. See, it's still panned hard to the right, but this time I'm going to make it go out through USB 3.4. So now what I have is a wet signal for my bridge pickup going through to line 2, and I've got another one going out through line 4, which is unaffected. Now this will give me 2 wet signals and 2 dry signals, one pair for each pickup. However, what I like to do is I like to make it consistent because it makes it easier for me in the production. So I'm going to do the same thing on the guitar line. I'm going to create another gain block. I'm going to disable the gain block. I'm going to make a second path. I'm going to make the split at the beginning of the signal path. And I'm then going to create another route out. This one I'm going to send to 3.4, but it's also panned hard left. So now, to see what we've got, I've got guitar coming in from the neck pickup. It's being sent out as a wet signal through line 1, a dry signal through line 3. The bridge pickup is going in and coming out as line 2, with a dry signal coming out line 4. Let's go and have a look at recording that through Reaper. Let's have a look at the DAW. So I'm using Reaper version 6.02. I'm running this on Mac OS Catalina. Because I'm using Reaper, first I'm going to create a group. So double click. I'm going to call this bass group. If you're using Pro Tools or another DAW, you probably won't be creating groups. You may be creating auxiliary buses, etc. But I find this cool with Reaper to group everything as I'm going. So I'm now going to create the tracks. I'm going to create 4, 2 wet, 2 dry. So the first one I'm going to do is the blue wet signal. Then I'm going to create the red wet signal. Then, yep, you got it, the blue dry. And then the red dry. I'm going to grab those there and move them up into the group so they're now controllable. So the next thing I'm going to do is record and enable those. Because they're grouped, they'll do it all at the same time. Now I can see the inputs. So remember we had line 1 and 2 for the wet and 3 and 4, or the USB ones, for the dry. So the blue wet I'm going to have a mono input 1. If I have it as stereo, it'll come out line 1 and 2. But I want to force out line 1. So the red I'm going to then have as input 2. So for the blue dry, this will be again mono input 3. And for the red dry, this will be also mono. I'm going to use input 4. So now I have 2 outputs for the wet signal, the processed Helix signal, and then 2 for the dry unprocessed, which I can then use for reamping, or I can blend a bit of dry signal in with my mix, depending how I'm going with post-processing. All right, let's go and see how it sounds. Happy to get some constructive feedback, or let me know how you do things differently in the comments below. As I mentioned before, we do a lot of videos on gear and tones, so check out our YouTube channel, subscribe, and stay reckless.